Hi, welcome to PLUMBLINE. My name is BERNIE LUTCHMAN, and thank you for joining me today. This is our show where we look at the Bible and biblical truth and application to modern life and how we can follow God and be a disciple of Christ in a meaningful way and the way that He intended us to be. As we always do, we start off with a little lighthearted section called Did You Know? And we look at some little trivial facts there you can use. Sometimes a Trivial Pursuit, maybe. Do people still play Trivial Pursuit? I'm not too sure about that. Anyway, these facts are facts anyway, and it's good to know. Did you know that the side of a hammer is called a cheek? Did you know that the bread slots in a toaster are called toast wells? Did you know that a Canton, Canton, Ohio, whether it's the NFL Hall of Fame, a Canton is the blue field behind the stars. Did you know that a bonnet is the cap on a fire hydrant? I don't want to try this, but I use non-dairy creamer in my coffee. It says it's flammable. So if it's flammable, is that really good to drink? I'll have to look into that. Did you know that before Prohibition, about 1920s, early 1920s, or 1919, somewhere around there, Schlitz Brewery owned more property in Chicago than anyone else except the Catholic Church. Did you know that there are almost 126 million different color combinations possible in a Rubik's Cube? Did you know that the world's largest Kmart is on the island of Guam? Did you know that all gondolas in Venice, Italy, must be painted black unless they belong to a high official? You know, they always have the different standards for those big guys. Did you know that, this is pretty interesting, the average person will consume 100 tons of food and 12,000 gallons of water in a lifetime. And this past summer, in a 100-degree heat, almost every day, I think that quantity of water went up big time. Did you know that the average human body contains enough iron, check this out, contains enough iron to make a 3-inch nail, enough sulfur to kill all the fleas on an average dog. The average body contains enough carbon to make 900 pencils. The average body contains enough potassium to fire a toy cannon. Toy cannon, never heard of that. The average body contains enough fat to make 7 bars of soap, or in my case, about 12 bars. Did you know that the average body contains enough phosphorus to make 2,200 match heads and enough water to fill a 10-gallon tank? That's pretty interesting. And can you believe that? Now this is true, all this is true. Yet people who believe in evolution think that there was a big bang and all this just happened. Give me a break. Did you know on an American $1 bill, there's an owl on the upper left-hand side corner of the one encased in a shield and a spider hidden in the front upper right-hand corner? And did you know there are 4 cars and 10 light posts on the back of a $10 bill? Did you know? Last program, we started a series on the law, the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. And in the last program, we looked at why study the law at all. I mean, the law is the law, and we just obey it. True. But there's a reason God gave us that law. There's a reason God gave the Jews 613 laws to live by. He wanted them to be obedient. And Christ did away with 603 of those, leaving 10 for us to obey. And the Pharisees asked him one time, "Teacher, what is the greatest of all the laws?" And they were trying to trap him, and he who gave the law said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might, and love your neighbor as your friend." The 10 Commandments is the law. The first 4 of the 10 Commandments involve our relationship with God. The last 6 of the 10 Commandments are about our relationship with each other as human beings. First 4, God. Next 6, each other. Today we're going to look at the first two commandments. And over the next several weeks we'll look at, depending on how we do with time here, because there's so much involved in this, and it's so interesting to study that we might even run out of time, but we'll continue the next time. So, 10 commandments. Commandment number 1 of the law that gives us life. Remember Psalm 119:93, which is our key verse for the series. Oh, how I love your commandments, for from them I get life. First commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no other gods before me. First of all, there's no other gods. But man, in his own corrupt mind because of sin and fall in the garden, creates his own gods and has always created his own gods and put him above the God of the Bible. And we can look at some of the stuff. God destroyed the earth with a great flood. In the book of Genesis, we read about that. And he had Noah built the ark. It took 20 years to build. And after Noah landed the ark on the mountains of Ararat. Now, by the way, the ark is not on Mount Ararat. The Bible says the mountains of Ararat. It's in one of those mountains. But that's for another time. When God sent out the sons of Noah into the new earth now, which had been cleansed of all the disgusting stuff we read about in the first part of Genesis, he told them to go forth and multiply. Now, some of them did not do that. In fact, most of them didn't. And the sons of Ham decided to build a temple, the Tower of Babel, which came to be known, so they can be greater than God. And their leader was a man named Nimrod. And they worshiped all kinds of demonic stuff. And since then, it's been downhill, and as time grows closer towards the end, worship of pagan gods and idols is not just becoming more prevalent, but it's also becoming more deceptive. And we see this in this new thing called New Age, which is nothing new. It's been around since Satan fell. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind. And today, to show you how deceptive and how Christians are getting drawn into this worship of idols, I want to look at a couple things called Christian yoga, which is an oxymoron, and R-E-I-K-I, Reiki. Now, the first one, Reiki, I don't know how some people say it, Reiki or Reiki, it's now been used in hospitals all over the United States as part of their therapy and healing processes, and including so-called Christian and Catholic hospitals. I'm not going to call any names of hospitals, but it's going on right now. And they're bringing all these experts in this kind of so-called healing to teach the registered and licensed nurses how to administer this sort of healing, because apparently medicine is not good enough and the Word of God is not good enough. And so it has caused some friction because some Christian nurses are lost. They don't know what to do. They don't want to lose their jobs, and they don't want to follow that stuff. They follow the Bible. So there's going to come a time where a nurse is going to be told in one of these hospitals, in so-called Christian hospitals, if you don't get involved with this kind of healing, which is based on paganism, and brought it and made it sound good so someone can feel better, you're going to have to leave. So watch out for that in the coming years ahead. So this Reiki stuff is led by a Reiki master in the hospitals, and it involves sending healing energies around the world into the patients. And it involves something called the 7 chakras, C-H-A-K-R-A-S. And it's done by the laying of hands and some strange kind of meditation and incantation to treat certain illnesses. The chakras, let me explain this, what this is, are so-called energy centers, allegedly from the base of the pelvic system to the top of the head. Now, there's some other stuff involved in that. You might see writings about it in books and on the internet about something called tantric sex, which is another version of paganism, which we will not get into. Now, what these nurses are now telling some of these patients and what these masters are telling these nurses to do in these American hospitals is that this kind of healing, where you do these certain chantings and you bring these, you call off this energy from the base of the pelvis into the body to heal these patients, that these hold the key to life and the energy of the universe. So they're using this kind of a strange meditation and the laying of hands and the demonic chanting to call down energy into the patient and so allegedly heal them. Now, can these people be healed? Probably, temporarily, but God is going to get his justice in the end. Now, listen to this. Those 7 chakras and that so-called energy thing, where he called down the energy from the universe, they call it the key to life. What did Jesus say? The key to life, John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. You shall have no other gods but me. Commandment number 1. These people are calling in things and powers of the air into someone's body, nothing based on the Bible, but meditation and strange incantations from the Far East, mystical stuff from the Eastern religions, and bringing it into Christian hospitals and saying that they're healing people. Now, who are the prince and the powers of the air and the universe right now? For this period before Christ comes back, the powers of the air is the devil and his demonic spirits. These people and these nurses are being forced to do that by certain hospitals, and it's going to come to a day when they have to choose between that and Jesus, and that day is coming quickly. But what's even more disturbing than Reiki, which is only practiced in certain hospitals for now, is this thing called yoga. All over this country, and I see it more and more, certain friends of mine, they're getting into this yoga thing, and they're posting on Facebook and writing blogs about how great it is, how beautiful it is, how they never felt better, and how they love this meditation thing. And in fact, some churches where I live and also around the country are now instituting something called Christian yoga. Now, yoga is based on Hinduism. So you speak to these people and they'll tell you, oh, we're not worshiping those gods of the Hindus. We're doing Christian yoga. We're just doing the exercise part. We're doing the breathing and the stretching and all that kind of thing. But if you actually look at the word yoga and where it came from, you'll realize that you can't do yoga and compartmentalize it by saying, I'm only doing the physical part, but I'm not doing the spiritual part. It goes together. So, by bringing Christian yoga, so-called yoga, into the Christian church, these so-called people, these people who are doing the so-called Christian yoga thing, are actually putting other gods before our God, and they will be held to account. Now, let's look at the word yoga. Yoga is from the word yug, Y-U-G, which means yoke. Now, a yoke is something that you put on your neck, like, for instance, let's say 2 oxen. If you look at, because it's still done in the Middle East and in the Far East, in India, where yoga comes from, they have 2 oxen, they have a yoke. You have one part of the yoke here, one part of the yoke here. Yoga. One part spiritual, one part physical. You can't have one without the other. So these Christians are fooling themselves, and not fooling God, by the way, when they think they're just doing exercises. When he specifically warned them, you shall have no other gods before me. Now here's where he wants us to learn this law that gives us life. Let's look at the different types of yoga, because it's important here. Okay. Now, before we look at quickly, briefly at some of the different types of yoga that are becoming popular in the United States, let's look at what an actual Hindu, a pagan Hindu, who practices and believes in yoga, says about American churches and Christians who are fooling themselves into thinking that they're just doing exercises and there's nothing religious about it. Here's what he said. The Professor Asim Shokla said to the Washington Post, "Why is yoga severed in America's collective consciousness from Hinduism?" Hinduism saying this. Yoga, meditation, and all the other stuff are today's syntax for New Age, Eastern, mystical, even Buddhist, but nary an appreciation of the Hindu origins. Oranges. Actually, oranges would be a lot better than getting involved in some of this stuff. It is not surprising then that Hindu school children complain that Hinduism is conflated only with caste, cows, exoticism, and polytheism, many gods. And then jumping down, he says, the severance of yoga from Hinduism disenfranchises millions of Hindu Americans from their spiritual heritage and a legacy in which they can take pride. Hinduism is a faith tradition, and it stands at this pass a victim of overt intellectual property theft, absence of trademark protections, and all that other stuff, that offered up a religion's spiritual wealth at the altar of crass commercialism. And what he's saying is that we so-called Hindus have to take back yoga from the Americans because they've made this big fad about it in the United States and all these gyms and everywhere else and fitness centers, and say they're taking Hinduism and the pagan polytheism and many gods out of yoga and making it a commercial exercise so they could sell fitness programs. And these people are mad that Americans are doing that because they know for a fact that you cannot separate the spiritual aspects of yoga from the physical. Now, there are different types of yoga. But the history of yoga, let me see, different types are called Bhakti, Hatha, Kundalini, and some other ones. But the ones that we should be wary of in the United States are this one called Hatha Yoga. This is the one that is more popular in the gyms and in fitness clubs, and which people are getting led straight into. And then this is the kind of thing, the Hatha Yoga, H-A-T-H-A, which is leading to something called Kundalini Yoga, which will send many so-called Christians into hell on Judgment Day. Let's read what Hatha Yoga is. This system of yoga is based on physical activity and is a type of yoga commonly practiced in the West. Indeed, most Western people think of yoga as only a physical exercise. But in its roots, Hatha is much more than stretching. It is a changing and altering of your mind. It is common for literature on Hatha Yoga because you get these books when you join these yoga clubs around town, and they give you books from Hindu sources to emphasize that the purpose of these postures and these stretching exercises and all that is to conquer stress. Now, here's how devious and deceptive and sneaky the devil is. These people, good intentions probably, they want to get rid of stress, they want to do some exercises, and they want to be part of the fad of yoga. So they go to these clubs, these yoga clubs, and they get these books because you can't join these clubs without knowing what it's about, and you can't do all the stretching postures and exercises and stuff without knowing what they are. So they give you these books to study. And these books will teach you how to control your breathing and meditate and you exercise. And here's where the sneaky part comes in. They start to teach you how to channel your spiritual energy into your physical well-being. Now, some of the stretching and stuff is great by itself. You can do that without getting involved in this paganism and getting yourself in trouble with God by just stretching yourself, stretching. Get a book, look at one of those regular exercise things on TV or DVD and learn how to stretch without doing all this kind of stuff. Now, here's one of the books says, the development of willpower, concentration, and self-withdrawal. Now here's where we're starting to get really away from ourselves and what God intended, and we're a violation of the first commandment. It helps you to put your mind in a focused state to prepare for meditation and eventually the search for enlightenment. Now, what does that sound like? Search for enlightenment. It's not, you're not getting enlightenment from this. You're withdrawing from yourselves, you're emptying yourselves, and you're filling up with mysticism, which is from another world, another dimension, Satan's dimension, the powers of the air. And finally, they are designed to open the energy channels. Here's that word energy again. Channeling the energy of the universe into your body. Whatever happened to energy bars? Open the energy channels, which in turn allows spiritual energy to flow freely. So, this is definitely the entry into a different lifestyle that God has called us to. This has led many Christians to fall into something called Kundalini yoga. According to one of the definitions of Kundalini yoga, it says, Kundalini yoga deliberately attempts to arouse and rise the Kundalini, or creative divine energy, which sleeps at the base of the spine like a serpent. Why are we talking about having a serpent in us at the base of our spine, coiled in 3.5 circles? And not only according to these people, there's a serpent at the base of his spine, but it's coiled up in 3.5 circles. Through control of the respiratory system, Kundalini yoga teaches that people can tap into this energy and harness it and control their entire body. Not surprisingly, this system of yoga is also associated with visualization, the belief that you can manifest reality by imagining what you want. Kundalini yoga this is the one that's starting to manifest itself. And Oprah had an author one time called Rhonda Byrne, and she wrote a book called The Secret. The Secret is actually a book based on Kundalini yoga. And it supposedly contains a secret that's 3,500 years old. Yes, maybe that old, because that's how old Satan is, and more. Now, what part of this has anything to do with the Bible? Just by the sounds of the definition, it's demonic. I know several people who started this practice of yoga, and one of them is well known in this area of a TV personality, is now going to meditation classes, chanting the word Om, O-M. That's how it starts. The other person I know left the faith and is now a confirmed Hindu. And by the blog she writes, she has hundreds of American followers who's, you expect Hindus to follow that kind of stuff. But this woman is leading people straight into hell by telling them to, well, this kind of meditation is based on Jesus, so why don't you take this prayer and chant on it and meditate on it? So, what part of that don't we understand? Why are we risking eternity by getting involved in this and breaking the laws of God? He gave us these laws to give us life. And we have turned and spit in his face because we're following the latest fad and thinking it's all good. The way to look at these things and to process them is to take whatever is popular in time in the culture and run it through the filter of the Bible. When we receive this kind of a knowledge and people try to get it, to sway us into things that we sense may not be right, for instance, why would we bow down to these Hindu gods and go into the yoga centers and start practicing yoga with them and feel nothing about it? Why would we do that? And then, or bring it into our church? Why are pastors allowing this kind of stuff to go on in the exercise classes in some of these mega churches? First of all, I question where these guys, this wisdom and discernment are. So when you get this knowledge and you receive it, first thing we do is after we look at it, we reject it out of hand. And we try to counsel some of these members before they get too deep into the stuff to leave it. These people have brought paganism and idolatry into God's church, and they've created images unto themselves, which is the second commandment, and there's accounting coming on judgment day for them. So think about these things. First two commandments, all about God, all about the autonomy, the exclusivity, the one God that He is. Think about it. Pray about it. When you see someone going the wrong way, pull them back. Thank you for joining me again. Look forward to seeing you next time on Plumb Line. May God bless you richly. In Jesus' name, amen.